Hello,
Well,
Father.
yeah, I'm here. I feel like a bunch of Neros are fiddling while Rome was burning. But someone else is burning birthday candles today. All right,
Yeah.
birthday candles. I know somebody who's got a bunch of them on their cake. Let's go ahead and bring that guest in. She's our super co-host on Wednesdays. And that would be this young lady, Brenda. Are you ready?
Me,
Me.
me, 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 me. Come on, get on me. Me. Ready? Right.
Birthday to
To
you.
you. Happy
Happy birthday.
birthday to you. Happy birthday,
Birthday,
dear
dear
Alec
Abby.
Wilbur. Happy
Happy
birthday
birthday to
to
you.
you.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. And Buddy, I really appreciated your cameo in the birthday video that Eric put together.
Thanks to Eric. I was kind of at that point in time, my brain was scrambled. But I got to get this done. I got to get it to Eric. But how was the birthday?
It was great. It was wonderful. I got to spend a lot of time with my kids, and it was a great day. It was a great day.
That's great. Well, we're looking forward to. I wish we had.
21 again. Yes.
Yeah. She's turning 30 this year.
Oh, is that 30?
Finally turning 30.
I'm
She
only
went
30.
next-
That's
yeah.
a good feeling. So it's a good one.
Yeah.
All right.
Congratulations, and we're looking forward to talking. And unfortunately, the topic is not going to be a lot of fun tonight, but we'll make it fun. The crashing and burning of the Gator Empire. We'll
Yeah.
talk about lots more to come. All right,
Yeah, let's do it.
Brendan, tee it up. And let's go.
Yes, it's time again for Buddy Martin. Call him up and tell him what you're thinking. But be kind because he's doing the best he can.
Better, stronger, faster.
Mama says that alligators are ornery because they got all them teeth but no toothbrush.
Hey, what if the voice calls while you're gone?
Take a message.
Bye.
You ready, champ?
I'm ready for this my whole life.
I'm incapable of small talk. But that's why you love me, right?
Kind of intimidating to be in the presence of so many great athletes.
Good evening. And tonight we're going to celebrate a birthday and unfortunately sort of commemorate a crashing and burning. I didn't think things could get this bad in my lifetime at the University of Florida, but what we got in our hands is a mess. And Alec, you've talked about it now for a while. We talked about it incessantly around the last 4 or 5 days. People can't get enough of it, it seems like.
Yeah.
And let me just say, here's the thing. I know everybody had their own personal feelings about this whole thing. And sometimes you got to get personal because it is my university. We talked about this some last week.
Yeah.
I literally got a brick in the university, the brick path in the front. And I don't mean I'm anything special, but I'm one of the ones who sat back and let those guys get away with this. But, what can I do about it? Nothing. I could have screamed more. And I'm thinking, how did this happen? How did it get so bad so fast? How come we all drank the Kool-Aid?
Yeah.
And you look at the evidence and say, where was the evidence to think it'd be any different?
Yeah.
Only in Scott Strickland's mind and in Billy's mind. And they didn't do this deliberately. I'm not saying they did it, a con job, but it felt like we got con. And here we are now in the direction, with no direction, and all the scenarios in front of us as to what happens, and not necessarily any of it's good. So I got mad over the weekend, got a little PTSD about it. Finally said, you know what? How could I let this interloper come in here to my school where I've been writing and whatever for 60 years, and let this guy do this and put us in the mess we're in? As I said, it's like the Humpty Dumpty verse. How can all the king's horses and all the king's men cannot put Humpty Dumpty together again? And you look at it and say, how they crash and burn academically too, Allie. Did you read about dropping
Yes.
spaces? And I don't know if they're related or anything else, but it's just a mess. And just like all of a sudden overnight, here we are. Tell me how we get out of it.
I think we get out of it by getting a new coach is as how I think we get out of it. And, I think so we all hold a little bit of responsibility for drinking the Kool-Aid, right? I predicted Florida was going to win 8 games. I fully own that I had some responsibility in that. And I look back and I try to think like, okay, so how did we get fed so much wrong information? And what I can basically, so practices are closed, right? The media gets a very small glimpse at the very beginning of practice, but they get kicked out before anything major happens. And the people that are allowed to stay are the big money boosters, right? And a lot of our big money boosters are not former players or former coaches. They're people that know the game and care about the game. And I don't mean to insult our big boosters, but they're not maybe necessarily people that would notice very small, specific things missing from practice that maybe former players, former coaches would notice. And I also think then the coaches talk to these boosters after the game and say like, oh my gosh, that was the most intense practice I've ever been to. They're all getting so much better. They're all this, they're all that. And lots of our sources come from those same people that stood and were allowed to stay and watch practice after the media has to leave. And those are the things that we rely on. And in hindsight, maybe that we shouldn't have relied on, right? But we did. And I think then our small glimpses of the cracks in the armor, so to speak, are things like former player barbecues when, the guys go and then we hear the rumors of like, oh, well, they didn't look big and strong and fast to me at all. And that is basically our only kind of insight that maybe things aren't as rosy as they were being painted to us. But here we are, right? And how do we get out of it? We hire a new coach. That is how we get out of this mess. I don't think there's a U-turn option on this season. And I would love to be wrong, right? I would love for Florida to start out on Saturday on a tear and finish with 7-8 wins. I just don't think that's possible.
I'm afraid you're right. I don't know about you, but I wandered around in the days for a while trying to figure this out because it wasn't just failure, it was abject failure. We saw it right off the bat in the first quarter. And somebody said, is it possible for a coach to get fired during the weather delay? I mean, they just looked awful. And we think, how do we buy into this? How do we miss this?
Yeah.
And I blame myself as well. But when you start looking at examining the evidence in front of you, there was no evidence for us to believe that Billy was going to take us to another level.
Billy doesn't know what Billy is looking at. And that's the problem. Right. If Urban Meyer had a bad practice or the team didn't look good over the spring or something like that, he would say, right now, we're not a very good football team and we got a lot of work to do. Steve Spurrier would say, even more brash comments than Urban was about how they weren't looking good out there and things needed to improve. All we've ever heard from Napier was sunshine. And so I think we're used to coaches being better evaluators about what it is that they are looking at on the field.
Yeah, we didn't know. But here's the thing. They all bought it. Including Spurrier. Spurrier bought it himself. I had many conversations with Steve about this. But the fact is that I don't know the warning signs were there. We just didn't see them or what. But let me just take you to a place where I was. Let's see. Because sooner or later, it's going to become personal. It does become personal. If you're a Gator, it becomes personal. And stop trying to believe in the Easter Bunny. At one point in time, I thought, I don't even know who to talk to about this. I don't even know who is they. I mean, I don't even know who that is. And one thing I've started priding myself on is kind of having some kind of link to what is going on in Florida, and I hadn't a clue. And I got angry about it when I started saying, let this guy get away with this. I let him get away with it. I should have seen it coming from the very first moment I ever met Billy. And this is not about Billy giving me an interview. I don't care about that. I don't want to be interviewed, Billy.
Okay, but he should have given you one. So I know
could
that
have.
it doesn't bother you, but honestly, it bothers me that he didn't give you an interview.
And I've asked Rick Hurt. I went through all the proper channels, did it the Boy Scout way, and asked nicely, and I mentioned it. And I even mentioned to Scott Strickland at some point, when you get called up, in as much as I have interviewed every Florida coach since Bob Woodruff, it'd be nice to get a few minutes for a few questions with Billy. Well, I mean, I not did I not did that. I went to several press conferences where I raised my hand and couldn't get a question in as a group member. Well, I mean, okay, I guess I'm just like any other intern there. The bottom line is that I kept giving him the benefit of the doubt. It's okay. It's okay. It's okay. Really, it's not okay. It's totally disrespectful because what he's saying was, we know everything, you know nothing, and we don't care to divulge what we're doing to you. And that's what he's done. And as I said to somebody, very, very well known, after the frustration of this, I said, I don't understand Billy's MO. He has these press conferences where he doesn't answer the question, won't let you get a second question in, and you can't get any information. I don't understand this. And this guy who said, because that's how Nick Saban did it.
But Nick Saban earned that right.
That's the point. He's no Nick Saban. He's not even Ron Zook.
Right.
So
Ron Zook is sitting in his lake house in Ocala going, man, I wish somebody had given me this much grace.
Absolutely he is. And Zucker, and by the way, his record looks pretty good now. Right.
Heck yeah. And he beat our rivals.
Yeah. So my point is that this happened. And now we're starting to look around. We're saying, Dead gum, we took a hit here bigger than we even realized, because how do you get out of this? What do you do? I finally got a hold of one person who knows a lot. Not in a position of power, but in a position of knowledge, knows a lot, about as much as anybody. And he laid it out for me over the weekend. He said, this is my opinion, but this is also what's happening. He says, Florida is obviously going to make a deal to get rid of Billy, whether he takes the buyout, whether he coaches a lame duck, whatever. You don't have a person on staff to be an interim, right? And so you have to get Billy, see if he'd be willing to coach as a lame duck. Then you still got the problem of AD.
Right.
Go get a GM type guy, not associated with the university. If that person holds the program together the rest of the year, while the coaching search goes on, you identify the candidate, Lane Kiffin, and you put all your marbles in that basket. You get to the end of the year and you say, okay, let's make the offer. And by the way, it sounds crazy, whether it's Lane Kiffin or not, he can bring a whole football team with him. Think about it.
Yeah.
He can bring 40, 50 players with him. So, and then you're faced with the situation, you better not be wrong, because this is it. And the crashing and burning is taking place, and we become Vanderbilt for a while. That's how I see it.
Yeah. I mean, I think you're right. I mean, I think Gator fans have speculated who they would like that GM to possibly be. I feel like if you read social media, people are loving the concept of going after Mark Pantoni at Ohio State, bringing him in. But I think that there's a scenario, because think about Lane Kiffin more than likely is going to be in the playoffs.
Wait a minute. Hold on. Go back with Mark Pantoni.
Yeah.
Not as coach.
No, as a GM. Mark Pantoni.
GM, right. That's one of the names. I'm surprised you knew it, because that's one of the names on the list that I saw.
Yeah.
Very successful for Urban.
Yes. That's one of the names that I had been hearing, a lot as someone that would make sense. And I do think that that's a name that makes sense. But if you can make that hire sooner, that can help you, because the situation Florida's in, this is the absolute worst possible year to need to hire a head coach, because nobody knows how these new things are going to play out with a 12-team playoff this year. The championship game is not till January 20th. The late signing day is the first Tuesday in February, right? The early signing day is going to have long passed in December by the time January 20th plays out. And we don't know how long Ole Miss or, any other target is going to still be coaching. I think it's a fair assumption to guess that anybody we would target would probably be somewhere involved in a 12-team playoff. We don't need another on-the-job training hire. So it's got to be somebody that's a proven winner. So, I think the idea of hiring a GM sooner rather than later is smart. I have heard that if a firing takes place, mid-season, that Dan Enos at this point is who they would look to as their interim head coach. I don't know if I love it, but it's the only person on staff with head coaching experience currently.
I don't like it. Anyway, the bottom line is somebody has to coach. Let's go get Scott Carter while we tell you about this program being brought to you by our friends at Meldon Law, and to see what Scott's going on with Scott here. Good evening to you, Mr. Carter. How are you?
Hey, buddy. Hey, Allie. Yep. Doing all right. Just got back from a little media conference, after practice. Just getting ready for Mississippi State. So see how it goes.
Talking football. Well, the natives are certainly restless, aren't they, Scott? And I know it's been crazy at your place. Everybody, and of course, the guessing game is on. And who knows? One thing I heard from one of the few people I can trust on this is do not believe anything you read or hear. Anything. That's what I was told. Do not believe it.
Yeah.
So we'll see. And you're on the inside looking out. We're on the outside looking in. And we're just taking worst case scenario here, Scott, which is not your style, by the way. And that is to say, it's not been a good week when you've lost your standing in football and academics. For crying, if you put something in that deal about dropping 35 places on that poll, Allie, about public universities, so, not been a good week.
Yeah, I know they dropped. I didn't. What is it now? 35th or something like that? I really don't even know. But
You got it? They got the numbers. I just read the figures. I think they say they dropped 34 places or something.
I think they dropped to like 35th nationally. I'd have to pull it up. I read it earlier, but not a very far fall from grace for sure.
Yeah. Well, anyway, that's the deal. So I don't even know how you deal with it there, Scott. You're right in the middle of all the mess, so you have to kind of go business as usual. There is a game to be played against Mississippi State on Saturday. I don't know how I can move the needle in one way or the other. It could make it worse, I guess, if they lost. A team, of course, as we know, lost to Toledo. So inside the building, as they say, Scott, you're there. What's it like?
It's kind of like what you guys would expect. I mean, everybody's just doing their job. I mean, I'm on the third floor in the stadium where the communications is, so it's not like I'm right around the senior admins each day. But I mean, I'm sure they're the same. They're doing their job. I'm more around the football today over in the Heavener, and it is kind of business as usual, but you can tell, I mean, it's a pressurized situation, but I think it has been since that loss to Miami. They got a little reprieve with the win over Sanford, but then they're right back to square one after the performance against Texas A&M. And, there's really nothing left to say at this point for Billy Napier or Scott Strickland or anyone. I mean, you've got to go produce results, and that's the only thing that's going to turn this thing around. And but there's still hope there. I mean, obviously, there's no one in the building hoping that they can't turn it around. I mean, these people care about the Gators. They care about what they do, but at the same time, I'm kind of, I'm one of those mid people who I haven't been there as long as a lot of the people. It also came from outside the athletic industry, the college athletics. But I've been in it long enough that I know how they think, but also still have my sensibilities, kind of looking at it from, just in a realistic fashion. And it doesn't look good right now. It would be a hell of a story if somehow they were to turn around and shock us. But, just looking at it right now, it's going to be tough with that schedule. But bottom line, the only thing they can do is go to Mississippi State, play better, get a win, and do it again the next week after the bye week against UCF. That is the only thing that you can do to get the noise, off your back.
Yeah, and Scott, Curtis, you're right in the middle of all this, and you can't really comment one way or the other on some things. But Allie and I were talking about this earlier. This is the thing. It's not just that they lost ugly. They got their brains beat in our teams, and we thought we got our hopes up. Everybody, even the HBC, was getting excited about trying to get this thing going, and we're shocked that this turned out this way. And Allie, it's how they lost, not just that they lost.
Yeah, I mean, I think, and you talk about the Miami and the Texas A&M game. Florida lost by a combined 27 points. It's not that they lost to Miami, who looks like they're one of the best teams in the country. It's not that they lost to Texas A&M, who, by the numbers, has a higher talent profile than this roster does. It's the fact that there was not a single solitary second of either of those games where Florida was actually in it. And I think that, a year 3, that is frustrating. Scott, I saw you tweet something today, and I actually almost took out my phone to text you, but it was a quote from Napier where he said, I think we got to recreate the game for the players, and emphasizing making reps real versus scout team this week in practice. And I have joked on this channel for a very long time, and my own, that the actual thing that Florida football does worst is PR. And that's all I could think when I saw this quote. Because what? Were you not doing this from the very moment? How does that even warrant being said? Because that's football 101, right? I'm floored at some of these statements that come out.
Yeah, I mean, that was a tweet. On those tweets, obviously, I'm just trying to tweet some of the most relevant stuff he's saying. And that was from the SEC conference call this morning, which isn't a video. But now, and I didn't really expect a reaction like it did. So Dave Walters, who actually asked the question, I ended up retweeting the entire clip, and fans can make their own judgment. I think what Billy was trying to say was, just ask, you going into a week like this where things haven't worked in the first 3 weeks, what are some things that you're trying to do? He mentioned that, you want to make sure those reps against the scout team are game-like. He also mentioned the in-between plays, turning up the intensity there so it's more game-like. So obviously that can be interpreted in a lot of ways. Fans certainly had their own interpretations, but I was, that certainly wasn't, I wasn't taking a shot or anything. It was just something.
No, I know his own words. You didn't take a shot by any means, but that is a frustrating statement to hear, no matter what the context, right? As a fan, because these are the things that Florida fans have been complaining about for 3 years. And, we live in basements, right? And we don't know football, but we know effort when we see it. We know enough intensity when we see it. And if you're telling me, oh, maybe we need to turn up that intensity at practice to get the outcome we need, shoot, why did you not turn up that intensity 2 years ago?
Exactly. All right. I'm going to jump in real fast and hear from our sponsor, and Jeffrey Meldon, and we've got David Moulton standing by. Let's see if we can put Humpty Dumpty back together again. Okay, guys? Stand by while we do this. Hear from Jeffrey Meldon. Meldon Law doesn't mess around. You did something terrific for the Florida band, man. Tell me about it.
Well, about 3 years ago, our dear friend Freddie Wiebe comes to us and said, the University of Florida won't buy the band a box truck to move their equipment around in. And when they go to Florida State, they go to Jacksonville or whatever, they don't have any, they have to rent trucks and stuff like that. So we collaborated and we put together a deal where we provided them a beautiful big box truck, and we wrapped it and with Meldon Law and the UF band. And by the way, the UF band was voted the best band in the country in August of 2023.
All right. Thanks very much, Jeffrey Meldon Law. They won't back down. Let's go talk to our friend David Moulton and see if we can put Humpty Dumpty back together again. I guess the thing that's so stunning is how far and how fast they fell from their perch. It hadn't been that long ago when this was the Everything University, and academically, and they even fell in that department. And David, from your perspective, what's this week been like?
I think it was the week that the Billy Napier era ended at Florida, whether they obviously didn't make it official this week or next week or whenever it's going to happen. I think this is the week in which it's difficult for even a Billy Napier supporter, a person who was really, really rooting for Billy Napier to make it. I think this past week was the week in which you went, I'll be damned, this isn't going to work out.
Yeah. There's a certain hopelessness about it. And I've used this anecdote 3 or 4 times. I'm not going to subject Scott to this the whole time, let him get back to his work. But I was at a party a couple of weeks ago, and this is after the Miami loss. And even I can see this is not going well. And this real dedicated fan, longtime Gainesville family, been there a long time, was at this party. He was asking our host about what was going on, what was going to happen. He said, well, I don't know, ask Buddy. He asked me, and I offered an opinion or two and whatever about how things were. I couldn't be very encouraging. So I went and said goodnight to the host. I came back through. He grabbed me by the arm. He said, please, can you give me some hope? And I said, you know what? I'd really like to, but I'm sorry, I cannot. And that's the part where you're talking about, David, when you get hope, that hopelessness that engulfs you. You think, how was I so wrong about this?
Well, I think, and I don't know what Allie and Scott think, but listen, either these guys are really not close to being good enough, or these guys are not giving the effort that's really not close to good enough. And either way, that's a complete indictment of the head coach and his staff. And then that's why, I didn't want Billy Napier to be 3 and done. I wanted him at least to get a year 4, because I think that, they may lose their quarterback. And then, that fan buddy that's wanting hope, give me something to, hope. Well, the hope is the quarterback. That's the hope. And he came with the head coach, and the head coach is not long for here. So that's another reason why I think it's, it just feels like, holy blank, here they go again. Muschamp, McElvain, Mullen, Napier. Man, this is damn near a generation now. My goodness, how in the world did this happen at Florida?
Yeah. It almost feels like a little bit of a betrayal. I know it's not. Let me do this with Scott, and we'll come back to this conversation. And that is to say, you're in the building. You know what's going on. There's a compassionate side. You're a very compassionate man, Scott. I know you've seen this before. The human side of this is really ugly to look at, I'm sure. And take us through your own personal friendship and relationship and feeling about Billy. Because everybody said, well, he's such a good guy. He's got to win. He's a good person. He has a bunch of Boy Scouts, so I didn't get in trouble. They're doing the right thing, eating right, living right. And yet, boom, it all falls apart. What's that like for you to watch that?
Well, I mean, it's kind of similar for me, like with Will Muschamp. Of all the coaches that I've kind of worked around there, him and Napier are kind of the most normal guys who you root for. McElwain and Mullen were kind of more veteran coaches and had a little bit more attitude about them. But these two guys, so Billy reminds me a lot of Muschamp in a way, but yeah, it is always hard to see that side because I mean, different personalities, totally different personalities, but just that stage of their career where you kind of like maybe this is the break they've been looking for. And you hope he succeeds.
On the job training.
Yeah, but I think that's in the reality. I think what Allie just said is what it goes back to. I mean, neither one worked out the way Florida fans had hoped. And, it's so weird. Here we are 3 games into a season. It's almost like everybody's written off this season. And it's still weird to me to think about that. So I don't want to totally say I'm writing off this season. But again, there's some magic that has to happen that we haven't seen before for it to not kind of go the way that we all kind of feel like it probably will at this point. But yeah, buddy, that's all. The human toll is always the real tone. And I know fans and people don't necessarily care a lot about that part because it's not part of their life, right? I mean, they're fans. They live, Cal or Miami or Seattle,
Well,
where
but
they're
Scott,
not
the other
around.
thing is he's going to walk with 26 million.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
it's really
And I've
difficult.
always told people,
Or
look,
something to be negotiated.
I would trade places with him right today, actually, really quick, if I could. Because as soon as I got my 26 million, I'd be on an island somewhere with Dan Mullen drinking martinis.
I'd be there beforehand. I'd say, send me the money.
But if he's fired, it does affect a whole lot of other people who aren't getting $26 million. So there's a human side to that as well. Staffers who, are making very menial paychecks comparatively to the coordinators or Billy himself or anything. And all of those people are affected. And it is the profession they chose, but it is also, as human beings, that affects all of us. No one is rooting for Coach Napier to lose his job or for this team to fail. Every single person sitting here talking hopes that this team can pull it together. But I think the objective part of all of us just knows that it's unlikely at this moment.
Let's just take a minute here to go over this thing. And I want to get all of your inputs about it. Scott, is that your first rodeo? You've seen this a lot, I'm sure. And David, you haven't, even Allie. The fact is how this whole thing took place. And you think about, well, Florida got it right twice, right? But neither time did they go out and take a truckload of money and throw it at Spurrier or Meyer and say, here, we'll buy a championship. It all had to evolve. By no stretch of imagination should Spurrier have come in and been as successful as he was. There was nothing in his track record to indicate that he was that kind of coach.
I don't know.
Well,
he wanted Duke.
Get it. I get it.
Come on now. I won an ACC regular season title, Duke. That's pretty.
I understand. I followed every step of his career. I know what he did. And I think and he said it many times, said it recently. Had he not beaten Clemson, he would never have gotten the job at Florida. And by the way, for people who said last night, we're talking about, well, Spurrier was a slam dunk. He was going to go. No. Bill Arnsberger tried every way in the world to block Spurrier. I can tell you, I know that for a fact. He was not a slam dunk. I know people had to fight for Spurrier to get the opportunity before Bob Bryan and what's the other guy's name? I've forgotten, Scott, who went up to Raleigh-Durham and said to Spurrier, here, sign this, you're the coach. So it was not a slam dunk. My point is that these two guys that came in who set the standard, they basically sort of stumbled into them in a way, and look what happened. Now, what makes this thing we can turn around and go out and say, let's get a Brinks truck and go get a coach? There's no guarantee. Look at Jimbo Fisher. And with that, I wanted to say that as they go forward and look, I don't know the magic answer or magic number or magic anything. I just know there's a toll taken on a lot of people, and a lot of loyal Gators who believed in this situation. I, for one, am angry, like Allie and I said, I'm angry at myself and others for watching this happen. Not that I could do anything about it. I just wanted to know. Here's my question for you. We go through the list of coaches at Florida who weren't coaches who should have been coaches and do a shoulda, woulda, coulda. Coaches who could have done it and been successful who should have been. I'll give you a couple of shouldas right now. You guys chime in and tell me what you think. By all stretches of imagination, whenever Doug Dickey was hired, I was not a Dickey fan as a coach. I hate what he did to the Super Sophs, but he should have been. He won a championship at Tennessee. And he was from Gainesville. He came here at a time where they thought Florida was going to be down. Turns out they had a terrific bunch of sophomores, but he should have been successful. Instead, he was an abysmal failure. And you think, so what's the magic formula there? Here's a guy that you should have. How about Ron Zook? Allie, look at his numbers.
Ron Zook could recruit with the best of them. I think Ron Zook was too much of a micromanager, and that's his downfall there. But if Ron Zook was the head coach right now, we'd all be celebrating his upcoming fourth year. The standards that we held him to are not the standards that we're holding Billy Napier to right now.
Right. So in the department of shoulda, woulda, couldas are people that should be hired or should have been known. Muschamp should have been successful. A Gainesville guy coming here. I don't know. Who's your shoulda, woulda, coulda, Scott?
Well, I mean, to me, it's really unfortunate at the timing of a lot of things with the Dan Mullen tenure. I mean, I think COVID distracted him, obviously, and frustrated him, and then the way the sport changed. I mean, Dan Mullen was, to me, he was the perfect fit if things were as they stayed in 2019. Unfortunately, the world changed a lot. The Gators were back. They were on their way back with Dan in 2019. I really believe that. But then he got. I don't know what happened to him. He's the only one who will ever be able to answer this question. We're probably not going to get
Something weird happened.
So we're never going to get it straight, probably. But I really thought he was the guy. But you know how that turned out.
David, you and I thought Mullen was the exact perfect guy.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm, with Scott and Allie, that's a mystery how. Plus, also, he fit the criteria of what the Gators will be looking for again here soon. A guy who had a proven track record, a guy who had done it and had done it at a much harder place. So you figure, and at a high level, he had done it at a Power 4 level. I mean, Dan Mullen had Mississippi State #1 in the country. Mississippi State in November, #1 in the country. I mean, to think that guy could run this program into the ground the way he did by the end of year 4 is stunning, because he didn't do that in Starkville. So how in the world could he do it in Gainesville? So I think that's always going to be a mystery to us. But I got to admit, buddy, if I was a Florida fan, I wouldn't be. I don't know what could be learned really from going all the way back to Doug Dickey and thinking about what.
Nothing to learn from it.
To me, there's 3 coaches that have been hired in the last 35 years who had gotten it done at the Power 4 level before they were hired here. And that was Steve, Urban, and Dan. Okay. And between the 3 of them, they really only had, Urban had the one bad year and Dan had the one disastrous year. So that to me is, if you're going to learn anything, no more, I guess no more guys who have gotten it done at the group of 5 level. If you're going to hire somebody who's gotten it done at the Power 4 level, which I have to admit crosses somebody off the list that I'm sure Gator faithful want no part of, but I actually think is going to be one of the next great coaches in college football, and that's the guy at South Florida. Okay. And I understand it's probably too big a leap right now for the Gators, and Gator fandom would lose their mind. But I think Alex Golesh is a stud. I really do.
Not enough credit, I don't think, for the Gator fans. They're not going to blame.
No, I know. I understand that. And, group of 5, and it'd be like, no. And I get it. But I do think he's going to be a big success at the Power 4 level.
Fair enough. That's fair enough. And as long as we're picking and we're throwing a name out there that's not Lane Kiffin, because I think he's the leader in the clubhouse.
There's no doubt. But I'm just saying, if you're watching Saturday night, and you got to remember, when you're watching South Florida and Miami Saturday night, you've got to realize that South Florida football program went 3 years where they won a total of 4 games.
Mm-hmm.
That program is 18 months removed from winning 4 games in 3 years, and 3 of those 4 wins were against FCS schools. They won 1 FBS game in 2020, 21, and 22. 1 FBS game. And now watch what that program looks like in 18 to 20 months because of Alex Golesh. And I know it'd be too big a leap and the Gator fans would lose their mind, but I am telling you, that's a stud.
All right, I'm going to give you a name, and there's not being surprised. You look at you see the Vegas list of who the favorites were, guys. Did you see that?
Yeah.
Long list. Anyway, there's one intriguing name. They'll never go for him. He's a guy I've kind of liked and watched over the years. He again is not big enough, but Jamie Chadwell looks like a really good coach. He's done it well everywhere. He's at Liberty now. He did at Coastal. He did terrific. He'll never get the opportunity because of Sunbelt Billy. What do you want to say? But that should be a guy off the wall who's not Lane Kiffin. And Allie, who's yours?
Well, are you talking about my coach that should have worked out, or are you talking about who my pick is?
Both.
coaches that should have worked out, I think Muschamp. And, in hindsight, had he not hired Charlie Weiss from the jump, I think that, which at the time looked like a brilliant offensive hire.
I didn't like it from day one.
I know you've said that before, but I feel like the majority of the people did like that hire. It was a splashy name. I think had he gone with a different offensive hire from the beginning, that he could have been successful. I will tell you that Muschamp's players loved him up until the day that he was let go and still love him. So he never lost that locker room. And Mullen, I know that some of y'all disagree with me on this. I have always maintained that firing Mullen was punting on third down. This was a guy that took you to 3 of 4 New Year's 6 games. I think his disconnect with the program and his checking out had a lot to do with the amount of times he heard no from the UAA. And I would have liked to see what Mullen could have done with the resources that were provided to Napier and some of the yeses that Napier got that Dan got no on, that I know he was frustrated about because he told me about being frustrated about it. In terms of coaches, I do think it's kind of lane or bust. I will tell you, while I think that Golish is going to need some time before he's really ready for a conference like the SEC, he said something so interesting on Jim Rome. He said, close games are for losers, and that there's absolutely no silver lining to him in playing a close game against Miami. And that is the kind of attitude Gator fans want. Don't give us the silver lining. Don't tell us we're close, or we had a great week of practice and unfortunately it just didn't translate. Just give us the freaking win. And so the attitude that Golish has would be enticing to Gator fans, but I feel like everybody's kind of lane or bust at this moment.
All right. Scott, I had a question here about an injury. Who was it we had earlier? The wide receiver who's out.
Trey Wilson.
Wilson. What's his status and what's going on with him, Scott?
Well, Billy was asked about that tonight, and I have not actually had time to look at the injury report to see what he was listed, because it came out at 8:10 p.m. Have either one of you guys listed? I know he was still going to be questionable. I don't know if he's going to play or not, but I would like to know what he was officially listed as. I forgot to look at that.
Listed as out. I believe he was listed as out.
Okay,
I did get texts about this because I was looking. I see on all of your comments, there's some people speculating that Wilson is out because he's choosing to be out because he's out on Napier. And Scott, I'm sure you could confirm this as well, but I have been told that he has a knee injury that got scoped and that he will be back in a couple of weeks, and that this is nothing to do with something more sinister going on, but there is a real injury that he is in the process of getting treatment on, and nothing more than that.
Yeah, I mean, that's exactly what I've heard too. I mean, I don't know what, I know some buzz was about some like he made on social media the other day, and sometimes that stuff gets just like so blown out of proportion.
Out of control, sure.
I saw it, and then, I don't know if it was him or not, but it said it was him.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. That's just a silly way to judge. Hell, I've actually liked stuff. I'm sure that I didn't mean to, but having said that, I don't know of anything beyond the fact of he's got an injury. He needs a little more time to heal. So that's what I know.
Yeah.
Remind folks of the time of the game with Scott and everything coming up. There is a football game that he played.
So. Oh, it's 11 a.m. Starkville time, man. It's going to be an early morning, and I don't know. It's going to be a tough challenge because, we saw what happened last year at Kentucky when they had one of those. So they're going to have to get up and get fired up fast. Tricky game. You guys know these games in Starkville have always been kind of tricky for the Gators.
Yeah, it's been kind of a graveyard for coaches.
Have you seen Mississippi State play this year? If this is a tricky, no, I'm serious. If this is a tricky game, and I understand that, maybe guys are quitting on Napier. Goodness knows the fan base has. Goodness knows it looks like this panel has. But I'm serious. They should be able to throw their helmets and shoulder pads on the field and win this game by 2 scores and get on the bus and come home. Seriously. Mississippi State looks Vanderbilt levels of bad. They look like they physically cannot compete at the SEC level at all. And I know the Gators have just gotten steamrolled by Miami and A&M up front. But, I mean, Mississippi State got steamrolled by Arizona State up front. So if we all know Zook got fired walking off the field in Starkville after a loss. Napier should get, and I don't care if we got an incoming president or not, existing president does this. I don't care. Strickland knows if he fires him, he's gone too. If they lose Saturday, Napier needs to be fired before the press conference. Seriously. No, because that means that, first off, either the entire roster sucks or the entire roster is quit. Now, either way, the coach has got to go. Seriously, they lose this game. This would be one of the 5 worst SEC losses in Florida Gator history. This Mississippi State team is bad.
Well, I think he is fired, actually, so we'll see. But we're waiting for somebody to hold his beer, and we'll see. I was told they're just waiting for somebody to be able to plug into the interim job. And I do like the idea of the names being tossed around as GM. And I do think Mark D'Antoni would be a very good one. He's the guy who put Urban on the map as his recruiting help. And of course, now it's just all speculation. Scott, we don't have any idea. So we'll just go to bed and get up tomorrow and see how we can read on social media and go from there. All right? All right, Scott, thanks so much. And final word and let you get out of here and have your milk and cookies. And David and I and Allie will clean up the birthday cake. Allie's on her 29th birthday. And we will finish up the show. Scott, anything you want to add?
Just like got to go win the game. Happy birthday to Allie, and I'll leave it at that.
Good man, smart man. All right, Scott, thanks so much, buddy.
Bye-bye.
Appreciate it. I'm gonna tell you folks real fast about one of our fine sponsors, and I want you to know that if you need an MRI, this is your deal. TitanMRI.com offers you a specialized service. They're in North Florida and around the Gainesville area. They'll take you on a specialized appointment. If you can't come during the day, you can come at night or weekends. You can call them up and get your appointment. And they make it as good of an experience as they can possibly make it to have an MRI. Don't you be claustrophobic in that cage, and they're attentive to that kind of thing. So if you need one and don't have insurance, they'll take your cash or card, and you can go have a good experience getting an MRI. TitanMRI.com. Well, where do we go from here?
Well, they got to go out and play the game, right? I mean, none of us sitting here are rooting for Florida to lose. And I don't love the comments that come out of a press conference. I don't love the effort that we've seen, but every week is a new opportunity to do better. And that's what I'm hoping for.
Get a win. And then if he's not fired during the bye week, then try to, build something and then beat UCF. And all right, you'll go to Knoxville, you'll get whacked. And then you come home and, you can play with Kentucky and then, you're 4-3 at the break, staring at the 5-game gauntlet, which doesn't look as hard, quite frankly. And, Texas is better than we thought. Ole Miss might be a little better than we thought. Georgia's about the same. LSU is a little worse, but still clearly better than the Gators, but a little worse. But hey, Florida State. I mean, the funny thing is, Florida's over-under was 5.5, and even with the team playing the way they are and the effort the way they are, they may still go 5-7.
I saw a really funny tweet about this Mississippi State game, and it was somebody that tweeted and said, "Oh my gosh, how are the Gators 6-point favorites against Mississippi State?" And somebody commented underneath and said, "Well, because Vegas thinks Toledo is about 18 points better than us." And that, it made me laugh, but like, whew. This Mississippi State team is really bad.
Really bad. I mean, like low Vanderbilt levels bad.
And the fact that we are a 6-point favorite doesn't speak well about Florida. I had a Mississippi State beat writer on tonight on the live that I did before I jumped on here. And he spent the entire live talking about how bad Mississippi State was. And then at the end, when it came time to pick, He was like, "Oh, Mississippi State's going to beat Florida," and I was like, "Oh my gosh, how bad do you think we are?"
Yeah.
Definitely.
You guys are smart. You guys are astute. You follow the programs of college football, and especially in Florida. You know things. You know people. I don't know. We're scratching our heads. I just have to ask the question and help me explain it to my dog over here. How did this happen, Allie? How did this happen?
We hired a coach who was in over his head. I think Napier has great intentions. I think he is a good CEO in terms of organizing some of the things that happen behind the scenes with a football program, right? I think he is good at shaping young guys into men. I don't think he's good at shaping them into good football players. And, I keep thinking about this tweet I saw when he was hired, and it said something to the effect of LSU had no interest in a coach from their own state. Florida was very excited about this hire. One of these programs is going to look really smart in 3 years, and one of these programs is going to look really dumb. And I think about that a lot because it should have been telling to us that LSU had no interest in Napier.
Yeah, I talked to a guy down there in Baton Rouge who knows a lot going on, and he felt like they should have had an interest at the time. He felt like they could have made a really good hire in Billy. Billy had a lot of people convinced. And yet, what evidence was there? There's no evidence to show he was going to be a championship coach. I don't know. So how this happened, I don't know. David, your thoughts?
Well, he failed at what he succeeded doing at Louisiana. I mean, he did have upper echelon personnel in that conference. He has not.
He is a good recruiter, and that's part of that, right? Like that's why he had good talent in that.
Yes, but this is a whole different animal, and the world changed on him, and he walked into a situation that I think was all worse than we thought. Not only in terms of the roster, but in terms of where Florida was with NIL, and so he didn't walk into as good a situation as I think we thought he was walking into. But if you remember, at least this is how I remembered it, his very first presser, he said, "This is a line of scrimmage conference, and we are going to be really good at the line of scrimmage."
He also said we're going to be really good at the details.
Right.
And I think that is a line that has come back to bite him in the butt too, because I am not seeing detail oriented. We were at the Texas A&M game, and our seats are section 23. They're in the north end zone. And because the game started a little after 4:30, we got to see a lot more of warm up than we normally do. We're normally like dragging the kids in 30 seconds before kickoff. And the D lines of both programs warmed up in front of us. And Texas A&M did first, and they were doing a warm up where they are doing a swim drill, right? And Texas A&M is all out, every single player, all the way down the line. And the coach is barking at them, and they're barking back, and every single player looks like they're giving 100% effort. Then Florida's defensive line goes to warm up. And I kid you not, Florida's players were like literally patty cake with their coach all the way down the line. But coach didn't say anything. There was not a single person on these players that, hey, that's not full out. That's not full effort, getting in their face, anything like that. They accepted the half-assed effort. And that, I think, is the root of this problem. I don't believe that they are actually working hard enough at practice, but the players only know what the players know, right? And if a coach isn't demanding more than you're giving, how do you know you're supposed to give more?
It's a great question, David. And the other thing is, I want to hear your take on that, a reaction to it. And I want to tell you what somebody in a very, very distinguished role and a great football mind told me about what he saw in the practices. And I can't tell you his name, but if I did, it would blow you away about what he actually saw. And he was looking for good. But go ahead and respond to what Ali said.
Listen, he's failed. I mean, he's failed. He hasn't gotten the job done. He hasn't brought in enough talent. Okay, he's brought in some, and you're right, Allie. He's a very good high school recruiter.
Yeah.
He's not a great portal guy, but also he's not proven he's a SEC level game day coach at all. And quite frankly, he's didn't prove that he was an SEC level hiring of staff guy either. I mean, and you mentioning the defense, I mean, I would challenge his hires on the defensive side of the ball were not SEC caliber. I mean, I'm sorry. The coordinators and I've not liked Florida defensively. They look for 3 years. I think they've been out of position. For 3 years, I can question their effort half the time. And man, do they blow assignments. My goodness. And this does go back a little bit to what Ali is saying, which is there doesn't seem to be any consequences for anyone ever. Can't get the right number of guys on the field. Shucks, we'll do better next time. Okay.
We're trying hard.
Yeah, we're trying hard and working on it in practice. This is the SEC. Give me a break.
Yeah. And, I think when we sit here and we have the conversation about who could be the interim, the fact that we're trying to convince ourselves, could he stay on as a lame duck coach because there's absolutely no one qualified to be an interim head coach on his staff. That's probably telling.
Right. Like where's when Tommy Bowden was thrown out in Clemson? Dabo Swinney was a wide receivers coach. Okay, but it doesn't even have to be someone to the level of Dabo Swinney. Where's the Alex Golish that's on this staff, quite frankly? Heupel's right-hand guy at Tennessee to help get that program started. I mean, you're right. I mean, we were talking about it on our show. It's kind of like, great, you want to fire Napier now, and I was saying at least wait until after the Mississippi State game and fire him during a bye week. But seriously, who are you going to promote on this staff? Okay, I mean, there's a part of me that wants to bring in a proven somebody who's retired. I mean, and I know it's laughable to bring Spurrier in for the rest of the year. No, actually, it's not. Okay, Steve knows what it takes to win at a high level. Steve he'd know the guys. He also would know the players that would say, no, these guys are dogs. Get rid of them. These guys are dogs you can play with. Keep them. Seriously, we need a pro. We need somebody who knows what they're doing to come in here for the final 8 games of the year if they're going to make the move.
I saw somebody in your comments comment this, and this is who I would bring on the staff. If I'm giving somebody on the staff an opportunity to be an interim head coach, I'm giving it to Billy Gonzalez. He's the only person on the staff that knows what a winning program looks like. He's done it here. He's been a part of it at LSU. If you're going to give somebody a shot, I'd give it to Billy Gonzalez. I don't but think about the number of people he brought with him from Louisiana. That should have been a red flag to us.
And his first hire was his offensive coordinator, quote, line coach, and one of the worst things they got is an offensive line.
Yeah. I mean, I just think if you have 100 staffers at Louisiana that are SEC caliber, how the hell are all the other SEC programs leaving them on the staff at Louisiana until you make the move? It just doesn't, there is red flags when we look back and truth be 100% told, I was never thrilled about the hire to begin with. I'm going to support whoever the head coach of the University of Florida is. And so I can get on board because it's our next guy and it's what we're doing for 3 years. But this problem was created because we decided the Dan Mullen problem was a bigger problem than making sure we had the right piece the next time around. If you were going to fire Dan Mullen, you should have had exactly like what happened when Ron Zook was fired, and that is Urban Meyer in the bag prior to the firing happening.
And the other thing, quite frankly, if we're talking about firing Billy Napier, then we have to talk about firing Scott Strickland at the exact same time.
Oh, yeah, you don't get to make a third hire. Sorry.
Well, right. So now, I mean, do you let them both be lame ducks for the next 8 to 10 weeks, or do you fire them both on Sunday?
You hire them, you hire a GM to take over. Yeah, I agree. Back to the point real fast before I forget about it. You're talking about the routine and how poorly they practice, whatever. This is told to me by somebody really, really top notch. They watch the practices from afar, and they observed over and over again. Didn't have much to say about them. But then he told me, he said, I don't know what I was seeing. This is a very well experienced eye and a guy who knows what he's doing. He said they would get their one-on-one drills, their offensive, defensive linemen. They all get together and go one-on-one. It'd be a bunch of hollering and yelling. And the offensive guy would get the better and they'd go, yeah, they'll pat him on the back, whatever. And they come back and do it again. Next time the defensive guy would get the better. Hey, I don't want to go out. Never did they one time say what the guy was doing wrong and coaching the guy out of the habit. In terms of the attitude, in terms of what you're talking about, I don't even know these guys were properly even coached. They were coached right. I don't believe anything they did was the right. I mean, I have no faith that the right coaching technique was. And Billy kept telling us, "Oh, we're getting better. We're doing this better. We got new people. We got new coaches. We got a new attitude." Didn't get better. They got worse. So
I had Steve Harris on this week, and something he said to me that was so interesting. He said that when he was at the scrimmage over the summer, that when stakes were being made, he was calling out, hey, you got to do blah, 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 you got to whatever. And then eventually a staffer came over to him and said, hey, they'll correct him on those things when they watch film tomorrow. Yeah. So, don't worry about it today. Yeah. And he was like, what? Like, we're not going to call out while it's happening what you can do better so you can get better the next play. You're going to wait until tomorrow when you go over film. Like, in what world does that make sense?
Yeah, and you're right. And all the coaching is done in the film room, not on the field. But
take the moment right then and there and correct so that the next down, it can be better.
Yeah. That's certainly how Urban and Steve did it. I know that. Hey, guys, great job tonight, both of you. Thank you so much. Allie, happy birthday to you. David,
happy birthday, Allie.
Thank you.
You can send her a check for her birthday. It'll be fine. So that money,
is that the stage Allie's at now? She'll just take cash. I mean, what is that like? When we were all like 8 to 15, it was like, cash will do.
Thanks, David. Good to talk to you, my friend.
Take care.
Have a good night, David Moulton of Miller and Moulton, and Allie Pete Wilbur of Peek Inside the Gators. Thank you so much. Have a great night.
You're welcome. See you later.
Thank you very much. All right, folks, always a pleasure to have those two on at nighttime. We're so lucky to have David and Allie on Wednesday nights. And thank you to Scott Carter for our wonderful guests we have. Excuse me. And I want to thank our sponsors. We mentioned, of course, Meldon Law earlier and Titan MRI, and now our friends at Red Star Medical Research. These clinical trials they do are so important. I hope you'll understand what it's about. You need to be able to understand what they're doing here. They're doing research for us on us, and they want you to take part in these clinical trials, if you will, please, because they can then send the data off to companies and get a better fix and idea on what we need for prescriptions, what we need here in our area to get better health. That's what we're all looking for. And Red Star's been doing this for quite some time with great results. Over 800 of these clinical trials on all kinds of things. If you want to volunteer to be a part of that, would be great. That would be helpful. You can look up on redstar.net and find out what these are on and apply. And if you get qualified, you can get the time and travel paid for. And you will be a part of these studies that will help you and your community and us all have better health. So we do thank the folks at WinStar, our friends over there, and for what they're doing. And thank you for supporting the community and for supporting this program. WinStar Medical Research, seeking tomorrow's answers to the health questions of today. And we'll see if we have our outgoing music, because tonight, if not, we'll play our intro before Brendan came in. Let's see what we got here. No.
Yes.
All right, we'll sing it.
Yes, it's time again for Buddy Martin. Call him up and tell him what you're thinking, but be kind because he's doing the best he can.
Better, stronger, faster.
Mama says that alligators are ornery because they got all them teeth but no toothbrush.
Hey,
What if the voice calls while you're gone?
Take a message.
Bye.
Ready, champ?
I'm ready for this my whole life.
I'm incapable of small talk. But that's why you love me, right?
Kind of intimidating to be in the presence of so many great athletes.